Alright, everyone, here we are. I was dreaming of streaming. I awoke, and here we go. One game this evening. Back to, we're spoiled, or actually deprived, in that tomorrow's two-game slate, starting the first round, getting the Crafters and the 76 Eyes into action again, starting the second round. May try to again do some sort of subscriber-only content for you fine people, the creme de la creme, the class of the industry, the members at Osmo.com. Try to do a breakdown of those second round series. Tough when we still have a couple first round series going, but I'm going to try to do something so we can talk about those series a little more in depth. The one game, when you're talking about one game for an hour, we have time to pretty much talk about everything. But there are some coaches things and tendency things and other stuff that I generally don't have time to bring up during a proper normal show that would be nice to be able to bring up in that context. So we'll try to again provide some subscriber only content, which went well for the first round. Proper two-game slate, can do rankings and everything. So looking forward to tomorrow. Waiting for people to file into the room, to tweet things at me. Hey, there it is. Let's send this tweet out and hopefully have as... I enjoyed yesterday's show. Managed to go basically the full length of the show discussing just the one game. And I think that discussion was productive. I feel even less confident in tonight than I did yesterday, which again went fairly well. But whenever you're talking about one game, obviously there's only, the difference between winning and losing comes between getting, one player right. Yesterday, spent a long time talking about, basically had it right. Said, I expected Jokic to play a butt ton of minutes. I said I think I am projected for 39. He played 38 and some change. So that worked about right. And obviously he was dominant. Did 2 fantasy points a minute. Some interesting questions. FanDuel has 3-game slate for tonight and tomorrow's games, which frankly is what should be the industry standard. I understand that in general with the larger days breaking up a dozen games and 1 p.m., 4 p.m. showdown for football and all that, but for NBA the product quality is so much better. They should do rolling 2-game slates so that there's always multiple games. If they made that their standard, they would fill better than they do now. I really think, honestly, they're just turning down Monday by not making their main slate. Feel free to run all the single game stuff, which they're doing anyway. But if they made their default product, their standard, Monday, Tuesday, and Tuesday, Wednesday, and Wednesday, Thursday, I think they would get as much, if not more money. You can still run the showdowns for people who want to play that night. But rather than now where FanDuel has 80% of their action on one day and 20% on the 2-day slates, and DraftKings has 100% of their action on the 1-day slates, and I don't believe they even have the 2-day slates. If they bounce that to, say, 50-50 or something, they'd make more money. And I actually have years of evidence of this, having chosen to make that decision, and again watched Fantasy Feud have 2.5 times the people in tournaments in April than we used to have in March, because we did that and people were like, hey, these slates are not as much shit. So disappointing to me that every year I literally send 2 tweets and 2 emails to the people in power and be like, if you'd like to make the site an extra $100,000 and rake and have a better product, you could do this and not be lazy. But thus far they've been resistant to doing the correct thing, which is hardly unique, but still frustrating. But yeah, yesterday went about according to plan. Spent, 15 minutes on Derek White and said I would have 0 and I was really worried about it. And for that reason, I would have some extra Patty Mills. And that all worked out perfectly. Spent a good 10 minutes on the rotations and the shot charts and looking at Aldridge versus DeRozan. And that turned out as we expected. It turns out you still wanted DeRozan. He ended up being the third guy to spend up on after you should go Jokic, Aldridge. It ended up being him and not Murray, and then from that it informed her decision getting the best layout of value, which was uh, on DK Bellinelli, where he was only 2,200 and gave you 13 fantasy points, which was good enough, alongside Rudy Gay, who finally just shot halfway decently and had himself a halfway decent game at his price. And last piece was it Mills? I can't remember, but Mills had 25 or so, saw extra minutes because Derek White was limited, because again Gary Harris is giving him a rough introduction to the NBA. So yeah, I don't know if we can do quite so well tonight. There's not again running 0% Derek White in your 150 lineups or something was probably going to make you profitable and probably land you on that winning lineup, which was not so unique that we didn't have 60 people tying for first place in all the GPPs, but still an enjoyable show and pretty good outcome for one game slate. Only other real takeaways from that game is that apparently Malik Beasley's minutes are not guaranteed. Only played, I think it was 17 or 18 minutes in that game. Was also terrible, which didn't help. But that was significant. He's still sort of in play tonight on the 2-day on FanDuel, where he's only 3,800. That number could bounce back up. He could obviously play better. He was banging out, nearly a point a minute for almost all of the series and playing, 26, 27 minutes a game. And there's an interesting sort of minutes quandary there with him and Barton, and there's a question with him and Craig exactly how the time goes. But those are price-specific plays. And again, we'll be spending a good chunk of my day tomorrow looking into watching some Embiid and Gasol tape and other fun stuff like that. So I'm kind of looking forward to my research there. Tonight, so again, the California teams. Nice to be here late with everybody, having a little nightcap, spending our evening together. Where to start? So last time before Game 5 of the series, the last few days generally have gone well. Some of it's been pretty lucky, but some of it I think was founded in some reasonable analysis. Any one game slate, any one month, honestly, isn't enough. If there's, I have had many people tell me, you were wrong last night, that was terrible, that was horrible. I haven't had anybody yet say, you know what, I've listened to a year of your shows and a year of this other guy, and this guy's year was better, or this guy's just better at what you do than you are, which is absolutely possible. But over the course of whoever you think the goat of goats is at DFS or touting or whatever, limiting it down to a night is preposterous, even a week or a month. There's just so many moving parts where one guy makes one shot and a game goes to overtime and your team scores 310 instead of 290 and you make $250,000 instead of losing every cent. It's just, you really need a fairly significant sample size to actually correlate results to input and advice. And I appreciate that praise from Twitter, but I don't even think it's really possible to. I don't think there's necessarily a best. I mean, if you were going to correlate a best, it's the guy who's the most helpful to the most people the most of the time, if you were somehow going to rank touts. But there's all kinds of ways to be a good tout. First of all, you can be analytically good. You can know a lot about the sport. You can be entertaining. You can explain things especially well. There's all sorts of different skills you should try to bring to the table, and then it's further complicated by the fact that players don't all need the same thing. There are people who are too crazy and need to be reined in, who are going to profit more following the advice of a certain group of guys. There are people who are too the hell chalky who need to be broadened out a little bit. There are people who just need the discussion. So not that I think you could ever come to any sort of quantified best of the best ranking or any of that crap. But hair looks great. Thanks a lot. Are we getting any ownership updates? Ping Josh or someone else in the chat. That is not my corner of the store. But thank you for alluding to me so I can do my poor substandard worst among the hosts here at Awesemo.com selling. We have ownership updates. Again, I was impressed that they rolled something like this out, into the season. Obviously, there's a lot of resources being spent on baseball and other places, and most of the staff is concerned with that. But our best in the universe ownership tool now has postseason and single game and ownership percentage and expected captaincy percentage. Anything to take from the Curry usage drop? Yeah, I will tell you that everything else... By the way, I particularly enjoy those of you who boost my ego by sending me dumb things other people in the industry say. Sometimes they're just sports people. Sometimes they're DFS people. But on your average day, I get 1 to 6, hey, this guy said this, Twitter messages, which are always funny. Saw a good one today that said, yeah, the real issue with Steph is that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has done such a good job defending him. That's incorrect on every level it can be. First of all, I don't think... Well, let's look it up. We have time. I don't think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has guarded Steph Curry on more possessions than Landry Shamet. I would be honestly surprised. I looked at Durant stuff for a while today. I did not do a deep dive on Steph because basically that's a usage issue and he's been perfectly functional when he's done anything. But let's do this and go here and go NBA.com and go Steph Curry and go matchups and break down. And Steph on offense totals in the series times defended. Yeah. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has guarded him 86 possessions. Again, that being defined as the longest number of seconds spent guarding him, which, using second spectrum data, just means being the closest person on the court past half course in that possession. And that's a decent number, but Landry Shamet has guarded him 128 times. So, the first half of Steph is doing badly because of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander defense. That's wrong is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander because he's guarded him on... Got 128 possessions for Shamet, 50 for Garrett Temple, 36 for Pat Beverly, 18 somehow he got on Gallinari, Lou Williams for 12. That's interesting how little time he spends picking up Steph on defense. You'd expect it to be more than that, just on switches. You'd expect it to be better. He's also absolutely roasted Lou Williams, so has taken 4 shots in those 12 possessions, made 3 of them, including 2 of 3 from 3, so that's good reason for Lou not to pick him up, but it's interesting how little that number is. But yeah, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has guarded him has been the primary defender on him on 30% of his possessions in this series, being optimistic. Okay, so now we'll go deeper into that and say, it's been that good defense. Yeah, in possessions majority guarded by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Steph is 13 for 18 from the field and 7 for 11 from 3. That's 72% from the field and 64% from 3. Not exactly shutting him down. Now, again, there are some... we're dealing with fairly large numbers here. 5-game sample size, 86 and 128 possessions. Sometimes Shai guards him for 2/3 of the possession, which would count as his possession, and then he comes around to pick, and Shai's nowhere near him, and so obviously this is not locked up data, but there's no reason, A, to suggest that Steph is struggling to convert or anything like that. And B, there's really no reason to suggest it has that much to do with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He is over people who he has more than 12 possessions defended against, which is the top 5 guys who've been closest to him in those possessions. His shooting percentage is best against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So, for what it's worth, it's good against everybody. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 86 possessions, 13 for 18 from the field, 7 for 11 from 3. That's extremely good. Number 1, Landry Shamet, 128 possessions, has shot 12 for 24 from the field, so 50% from the field, which this is Steph Curry. That's a little under his average, which you would expect in this spot. One of the few members of the 40, 50, 90 club, that being 50% from the field, 40% from 3, 90%. Fun little tidbit. The members of that club are very, very limited. People who have reached a certain sample size and have shot 40% from 3, 50% from the field, 90% from the line is... there's... Someone can correct me and go ahead and tweet me or drop this in the premium Slack chat if someone wants to look up the list. But it is Steph, and it is Dirk, and it is Durant has done it. I know Mark Price did it once. And 2 other people, and this year, Malcolm Brogdon. Just if you're looking on interesting guys, who's always been a pretty solid defender. Underrated guy, and his shooting this year in his limited action was obviously brilliant, where he managed to draw. I literally think there's 6, 7 people in that. Do you think Looney, captain, or Curry is better since, yeah. I have no issue on the Warriors with, you can make a reasonable, I don't have a strong preference right now between Durant, Curry, and we'll talk about Durant and Curry for a little bit more, but Durant, Curry, Looney, Draymond makes a fair amount of sense for me at his price. Still, I mean, your obvious go is Durant. As far as Durant and Curry go, as far as Curry goes, my mind says no, but my body is telling me yes. Basically, this series, game one and game two, Curry was much more dominant. Durant was passing the ball, pretty laid back, pretty passive, and in the last 3 games has just taken way more shots than Curry. It is something like, I don't have it up, but something like 11 more, 7 more, and 12 more shots over those 3 games. I think it's exactly 30 more shots between games 3, 4, and 5, or collectively games 3, 4, and 5. This is a little bit of an exaggeration or a little bit of a poor metric to judge the difference in usage between them. One, you had the 20-minute Curry game in there with a lot of foul trouble, and even in another game, lost significant time due to the foul trouble. One of the blowouts is chunked in there. We've gotten more time out of Durant. Now, I generally have Durant projected for an extra minute or 2 over Curry, so that's to some degree expected, but 10 extra shots a game, really a difference between averaging 13 and 23 or what have you over that sample, is significant. And while it's a bit of an overstatement, there has been a really significant usage difference between those 2 guys. So again, to tell the story, started the series, Durant was kind of laid back. Game 1, Game 2, lost Game 2 in that historic whatever. Durant has his whole, you know who I am, I'm Kevin Durant thing. 3 games in a row, he's gone off, and they lost one of those games too. So, if both losses came in the big Curry game, or if both losses came in the games where Durant was taking over, it'd be more easy for me to construct a narrative, or to be like, this is what I think Steve Kerr does. I've read everything he said. I don't think his allusion to we might change the starting lineup means anything. I think that's a joke, largely. If it is, it's swapping out Bogut for Looney. And I'm fine with Looney now. I would be more fine with Looney in the event that he was starting. I think in general, that's a positive trend for his minutes. But in the last game, Bogut wasn't in foul trouble and still got 5 fewer minutes. Then I think Looney got 22 minutes and Bogut played 17. Bogut just wasn't playing that well. The energy wasn't quite there. He literally looked a step slower, and that was interesting. I liken that situation to JaMychal Green a lot tonight. JaMychal Green, another guy, everyone in the industry writing about him. Not one person took the time to note that he played 17 minutes and 50 seconds in the first half of that last game, and only didn't play that amount in the second half because of the foul trouble. Worth noting that for a couple minutes in the first half and for his last 2 stints in the second half where he picked up fouls 5 and 6, he was out there next to Montrezl Harrell. So, not dissimilarly from looking at Bogut through games 2, 3, 4, I have JaMychal Green projected at 34 minutes. I think they want him out there. I think they have, Lou and Harrell and Gallo out there for plenty. Those guys are going to take care of the offense, so you are going to see more JaMychal Green, continue to see plus minutes for Patrick Beverley, because obviously you need to do everything you can to stop these guys. If Green doesn't get in foul trouble, he can take more of that Durant time. Neither Looney nor Bogut are guys you need to worry about nearly as much on offense. I was going to say worry about on offense. Obviously they can make a layup, they can make a putback. I like both Looney and Bogut fine as players, but you're not worried about them beating you so much on that end of the court. Draymond Green, sort of the same thing. Brilliant defender. Great passer for being such a great defender and a reasonably big guy. But you're worried about Steph, Clay, and Durant dropping 160 on you. So you're trying to put out guys to stop that from happening, so that makes sense. Not dissimilar from the Torrey Craig move. You have Jamal Murray out there. You have Jokic, who's, maybe the best facilitating big man in the history of the game. You have any number of other guards who can score for you. Gary Harris can do a little bit, but you have some Beasley and some Monty Morris off the bench if you need that fire. So, why is Will Barton out there starting and being horrible on defense and getting trashed? So that's sort of how that went down. Not terribly surprising in that series, but I guess yesterday's biggest edge for me was being massively underweight on Derek White. Again, I said I would have 0, and that was a big risk, and that was a big risk, but it would have worked out. Today, I would go massively overweight on JaMychal Green. In our projections, we have him at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, ninth most popular guy on DraftKings at only 28% ownership. That's too little for someone who can really trash the hell out of his price. He is the lowest priced guy in our top 12 owned. We have Landry Shamet as the next cheapy guy to be listed at all. I mean, when you look at JaMychal Green, of players we expect to play significantly, we have him basically lower than everyone but Harrell. He's basically the same as Shea and Bogut. But, Bogut is more. Harrell is much, much more. Shea has lost time due to the issues. Landry Shamet has like a 10% usage. JaMychal Green projects to be just fine as a fantasy producer, and for me to play towards the mid-30s in minutes, his ownership is going to be well low. So, yeah, if someone said in 10 seconds what's your biggest piece of advice for today's slate, I would say go overweight on JaMychal Green. If this ownership in the high 20s or low 30s is right, yeah, I think that's significantly too low. Let's see. Other people said don't play him because of Montrezl Harrell. Again, they wanted to play him next to Montrezl Harrell. Montrezl Harrell came in while JaMychal Green was still on the court in the third quarter. JaMychal Green picked up fouls 2, 3, and 4, departed, came back with Montrezl Harrell on the court, played for a little bit with Harrell on the court, got his 5th foul, checked out with Harrell on the court, checked back in with Harrell still on the court, got his 6th foul. So, no, there's not those two guys are only going to play 48 minutes. As a matter of fact, if you look at that game, you got 27 out of Green and I think 27 or so exactly out of Harrell. So that was 6 or 7 minutes they played astride each other. And I will go ahead and project that number to rise again today. Yes, they each played 27 minutes, so suggesting that they can't or won't play next to each other is patently false also. So, yeah, I have Montrezl Harrell for 28 minutes. I have JaMychal Green for 34. Stephen Curry. Durant and Curry? We'll go with Durant and Curry, which is what I was trying to talk about there. Yeah, basically, I could go the full, breakdown who's guarding who. I've watched each game, almost every minute of each game in the series, and I've watched every regular season game they've had twice now. There is not a lot of player breakdown. I expect this performance to include this performance to degrade significantly with this team. They're both getting what they want. The one who takes 22 shots instead of 15 shots is the one you're going to want. As far as what we have the ownership looking at right now, and this, I guess, being the most valuable piece of data, right now we have Steph owned more than Durant. We have 77% Steph with 26% captaincy versus 69% Durant with 17% captaincy. I will slightly differ with that. I think the numbers are about right. I think they are both north of 70, but I think they are both north of 70. Especially with Durant coming off the 70 burger captaincy, 110, whatever the hell he put up. I don't see him being that significantly less owned than Steph. I think the public uninformed and the public informed just, look at the fact that he's taking such massive usage. The guy we have sandwiched between them, the other super high-owned guy we have Draymond at 52%, but our top three are Steph, then Gallo, then Durant. I would generally, even at their prices, want to play Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell over Danilo Gallinari. This can obviously go badly. Gallo had a passable shooting game last game. He shot 9 for 22 after shooting 5 for 20 in the previous game. He is not the most mobile guy in the world, not the most able to create his own shot. He can obviously shoot over people, but again, he spends most of his time running into frequently Kevin Durant, often Draymond Green, sometimes Klay Thompson. None of those are good matchups for him. So, absent a truly great distributor or some sort of matchup hole or, switchability, it is... I am concerned with his ability to put up. I would come in under that number, to be sure. There's obviously no reason not to play Danilo Gallinari. He's not that expensive, and whereas, he shot 9 for 22 and 5 for 20. 20 shots is good. 22 shots is good. The 2 games before that, I think he took 13 and 17. It is going to be, a big part of this offense. But if you look at those last 4 games, you got basically a 20, a 30, and 2 40s for fantasy points out of him. Obviously, he could shoot 14 for 22, and that number could be 50. I find that to be a less likely explosion of value than Lou Williams getting 55 or 60 at his slightly increased price. Or I slightly prefer Montrezl Harrell raw points, and he's cheaper. But you obviously have buckets and buckets of minutes. And again, that one reduced 13-shot game out of Gallo, where I think it was 2 of 13. It was definitely 13 shots. He definitely didn't make many of them. I think it was 2. Might have been 3. Came in one of the super blowout games. He only played 25, 26, 27 minutes in that game. If it hadn't been a blowout, he'd gotten up to 30 whatever again. And in this last game, he played 42 minutes. So 42 minutes, 22 shots. I get it. But I think a little bit of that time comes away here. I have him for 38 minutes. Partially that being Green not getting in foul trouble, playing more, aside Montrezl Harrell. And I don't know, I like him. If he was 50% owned, I'd be like, it's good, I like that. And 50% owned is a big goddamn number. If he's going to be 70% owned, and the DK price is a little too cheap. He's $8,600, where Harrell, I think, is $8,000 on the nose, and Lou Williams is $10K. Yeah. But 70%, I would want less than that. It's nowhere near the Derek White full fade this guy. I think the matchup is that bad, and there's just so many easier places to go. There aren't any easy places to go on this team. Unless you're Lou Williams, where you can make shit easy because you're amazing. Talking about Lou a little bit more, he was my favorite play in Game 5. That obviously worked out. He was the best play on the slate. He had bad games 3 and 4. Certainly could have happened Game 5 again. But if you thought this game, especially in the context of if you were playing Durant or Curry, which you almost certainly were, you wanted that game to stay close, and if that game stays close, whereas you can get it out of a Harrell game or something like that, or a Gallinari game, the most likely way was Lou Williams taking 20-something shots instead of 10 or 12 shots and doing things that he did, and his price was down to $6,900, and yeah, that was fortunate that it worked out. Many times it wouldn't, but that was definitely the right play to make there again. And I like Lou Williams in that context again. He is the most likely guy to keep that game close. Talking about the other guys here, generally I would be under on Shamet. I much prefer JaMychal Green, obviously, even at his prices. Said before each of the last 2 games, I like Patrick Beverley. Most of their trio of guards liked him over Shea, who has had one big game this series. Very good game. Liked him over Shamet. Some bullshit there. 10 and 14 rebounds out of Pat Beverley are outliers. Now, in fairness, he's playing more minutes than he usually does. He's basically a 5 rebound guy. He's a very good rebounding guard. He rebounds. Steph rebounds very well. He's in that class of very good rebounding guards. But normally he's around a 5 guy. Based on the extra minutes, that would bump to 6 or 6.5. And then based on the teams going small a lot and just having fewer centers on the court, which is important to keep in mind if we want to talk about Looney and Bogut. They collectively played, I think, again, 39 minutes in that game, so you got 9 minutes of Draymond center. That certainly becomes relevant, but that helps Beverly's rebounding too. So, now you're looking at maybe 7 or 7.5 as a reasonable expectancy, and he's motivated as hell, and if you've ever played basketball, you know that there are times you're just locked in going after every goddamn ball, and he's jacked up and good to go right now. So Yeah, 10 wasn't crazy. 14, we had that 15 Steph rebounding game at the beginning of the series. It's about as likely as that. But they would be, counted on to rebound similarly, where 4, 5, 6, not surprising at all, expected. 7, 8 is good. 10 will frequently happen. 14 and 15, those were just like, hey, bonus. And then especially on DraftKings, that's putting you into more double-doubles, even triple-doubles as far as Steph is concerned, come into realm in that possibility. And then Beverly has made more threes than he usually would, especially against an elite defense. So, he has overperformed a little bit, but I'd still prefer him at his present prices to either of those other two guys. And I would still go Shai Gilgeous-Alexander over Landry Shamet at their prices as well. Things. Let me go back to my beginning of series notes and see if there's anything. I wasn't bad. Got about 25, 30 minutes of quality content, but gonna be talking out of my ass for a little bit here. No, I think, look, so JaMychal Green, there's any number of ways it can fail. Again, 30% to me is objectively too low. I think the correct point of equanimity where he should be owned for what I expect him, minutes and production and salary, would be 50-55 or something like that. So it's just too under-owned. That being said, if he was 50-55, I'd have been like, yeah, play him, don't play him, because there's a number of ways he can fail. Off the top of my head, the 3 or 4 most likely are the game could blow out massively and really, really crimp his minutes. 2, he's JaMychal Green, so he's not necessarily that productive on offense. 3, he fouled out about the last game, and that's for a good reason. When you're trying to sit on top of Kevin Durant, you're going to pick up some fouls from time to time. That guy's pretty hard to guard, plus you have other, elite Warriors offensive options. His fouls per game are going to trend up a little bit. The usage is a concern. So there's certainly ways it cannot work out. But, I have him for 34 minutes and 28.5 fantasy points. That feels obviously very good to me. I don't know, we'll look at some of your questions. Maybe we'll shake loose. Any love for Zubac? Josh's projections liked him earlier in the day. Not sure if they were updated. Zubac has not played each of the last 2 games. Again, JaMychal Green being the most relevant person in that decision. He's absolutely fine to play in showdown tournaments and stuff, because his one really good game this series came when they got massively blown out. He played the entire fourth quarter and had literally, I think, like 30 fantasy points in the fourth quarter of that game. Which is a real possibility. You can run Zoo out there, but you need the game to blow out, and that is functionally less likely simply due to the fact Livingston starting. Okay, now it's a party. Stand by. That's exciting. It's gonna get quiet here for a minute as I look up any number of things and go to some notes from last year and So yeah, I really didn't think they'd pull the trigger there, but looks like they did that. That's interesting. Looking at their various lineup success, I wasn't that much more impressed with the small ball lineups than Zubac scored 2.5 in his 17 minutes in that blowout game. Could it happen again? Yes, it could. There are very few things in this universe that could happen only once and never happen again quite that way. So, sure. However, we have actual news. I'm going to spend some time looking into Sean Livingston things. So please give me a moment to really look at a few things, because I, in all honesty, did not expect that. So we're going to have to, what do we have? 24 minutes? Give me 3 to 5. I will occasionally say things during these 3 to 5, but if you're curious what I'm doing, I'm looking at previous games he started. I'm looking at the various efficiency of the lineups they've run this postseason, and which have been the most efficient, which have run the fastest, how I think this affects the over-under, and about 16 other things, going through my previous notes in this section. Okay, so Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. "25 minutes before lock, that news came out, huh? So I'm gonna have to make a call at price and ownership at some point." Sorry, I would talk bullshit, but I just want to do this as quickly as possible. Are we going to see everyone go to Livingston now and fade? Well, yeah, that really ends up being the question. When I'm done figuring out what I think is going to happen, then I'm going to go look and see what he's priced and what I expect him to be owned. And then from that... you know, come up with recommendations on how much I would play. So you just gotta give me a minute here. Concurrently, I'm gonna do the incredibly yeah, it helps if you spell Sean right. Okay, I'm close. Just gotta look at everything. Again, he started no games from this year. He started 7 games in the 2017 year. During the regular season. He hasn't started a postseason game for them in several years. Okay, so I think I know what's going to happen now. Let me come up with some advice based on it. Is that bum Livingston going to hurt Iggy? No, that isn't my impression. I think he's going to hurt Bogut and Looney the most. I would find that to be more likely than him hurting Iguodala. I'm now looking at specific game log in and outs and games where he started previously. We're close. Yeah, he did not start a regular season game this year. He started 7 last year. At no point in any of those games did he play more than 25 minutes once and 24 minutes once. So just looking at that sort of, you know, raw numbers of it, he has not started a game in the postseason since the 2015-2016 year, where he started 7 due to injury. I'll take care of it. I got everything. I just there's about 45 things I have to look at here, from lineup efficiency to just figure. I'll look at it all before talking about half of it, and we'd look better. All right, so Michael Green starting at center. By the way, and that's third time in a row that's happened, by the way. But if you had some concern there, they are starting their same lineup. Okay. Well, this really strikes me as a Steve Kerr wanting to look like he's doing something. Okay. I got that. Yeah, I would take a bet on that. I am curious what he costs. Well, okay. My projection for Sean Livingston is going to be 22 minutes, 14.5 fantasy points. I am generally disinclined from playing him for a few reasons. First, there is an underside on those minutes that is pretty significant. Second, being out there with Curry and Durant as opposed to actually, doing some fair amount of ball handling has, severe potential downside for his ability to actually be productive in his time on the court, and for just tertiary reasons, I just think it's reasonably likely he fails. Now, in fairness, he, on the main slate on DraftKings, does now become my favorite minimum price play on DraftKings. So, in that context, which I guess is largest site, largest slate, probably the thing most people care about. I legit like him a fair amount on DK if you are playing $1,000 guy. Previously, that spot was Alfonso McKinney. And there's no reason you can't still play McKinney. You're now going to get McKinney at one game showdown slate, still something like 4 or 5%, and Sean Livingston is going to be at $1,000, 35 or 40%. By any raw points projection, I have to prefer Sean Livingston a little bit now. I think he gets you around 15 fantasy points. Again, I don't have time to go deep into the weeds and give you the difference between 14, 14.5, 15, 16. That's the most likely projection for him. His usage should be, scarily low here. Again, if you look at the 4 games of the series, he's played exactly a dozen minutes in each of those games. Let me make sure I'm getting this right. Did he not play in one game? I'm just game logging this at the moment. No, he played them all. He played 12 minutes in 5 games. In those 5 games, playing 12 minutes, he has taken 1, 2, 3, and 6 shots. He has made 1, 1, and 3. He is 5 for 14 from the field in this series. In this series, he has played 60 minutes, exactly, well, give or take some number of seconds, and has scored 36 fantasy points in 60 minutes. Okay, so I might be high on 14.5. And those were, again, with proportionately more usage. So, if I'm building one lineup, I can see playing McKinney over him at 1,000 if you're playing a $1,000 guy. I don't have a strong take on that. There's obviously some better chance at him, normalizing into a more productive game, but in any context where you're not paying a stupid low price for him, like FanDuel, if you're playing the 2-day slate where you can drop him, yeah, I can see going with it. FanDuel, I imagine he's their floor 6K on the 1-day slate. Let me look at some things. But yeah, I'm going with 22 minutes and 14 fantasy points. And again, I'm perfectly happy to look at that as we get closer. Is he actually the minimum on FanDuel as well? He is. He's also 6,000 there. You end up in a very similar situation to Alfonso McKinney again. In his, I'm looking at FanDuel numbers because I have it up in front of me. In his 5 games on FanDuel, where he apparently played 11, 11, 11, 12, and 12 minutes, they rounded differently. He has 1.4, 3.5, 7.4, 12.8, and 12.2 fantasy points. So better than a fantasy point a minute in a couple of those games on the back of some decent peripherals. Alfonso McKinney has played 3, 6, 8, 12, and 17 minutes because of the one massive blowout, and has 4, 6, 9.4, 9.4, and 15 fantasy points. Right. So I still do think it makes the most sense from a raw points play to play Livingston. I did not actually do a point projection for Alphonso McKinney. I think the blowout in him getting some superlative number of minutes is less likely than it would normally be. So it's a different situation, I guess, because everything is showdown. Sorry, my brain is in multi-game slate where you don't have those super low floor guys. Again, 6K on FanDuel, which is not super low floor, but 1K on DK. Yeah, if you look at a good example would be yesterday's best possible lineup had Marco Bellinelli in it, who scored, I think it was on DK, 13.5 fantasy points in his 20 minutes played, and he cost $2,200. So 24 minutes before lock, I think he will be 30 to 35% owned. I'll stick with that, and I'll tell you in 20 minutes or what have you. Oh, my eyes are going. Let's make that 12 minutes. Yeah, I mean, I feel good about the projection. I'll stick with 22. That may be a minute or two high. Put a gun to my head, I might drop that to 21. But low 20s in minutes. Almost no chance of more than 24. I believe those minutes come significantly from Looney and or Bogut. I would really try not to play almost either of those guys at this point. This is a real concern. There are other valuable plays. Livingston himself, McKinney, some of the blowout plays, other places to go. I like Kevon Looney as a basketball player. I would have the 2-day slate on FanDuel. McKinney at power forward and a punt drop, I think, still is tolerable to me. Although at this point, I imagine there are plays I like a little bit more. I'll go look for a second. Why not? We're just sort of talking here. Mike Scott is out, so maybe, the play there becomes Jonah Bolden or something like that if you're looking for, a punt down towards the floor there. But, yeah. So, went through, obviously, tons of time, tons of rotations. But I'm hesitantly thinking of dropping the minutes projection even by a little bit. I'm going to stick with 21. I'd be surprised if it's less than 18. I'd be shocked if it's more than 24. It's not a large effect on anyone but Bogut and Looney, who are dealing with real issues now. Not just because of this, but because we presume there's some point where there's Iguodala on the court too. I expect them to also boost the minutes of these other guys a little bit. I think they're sort of in the we're done fucking around mode. They'd like some decent rest between round 1 and round 2. Obviously, Rockets waiting in the wings for them, but they don't want to push this to a game 7. I think they can end up mising an additional day because of the still continuing San Antonio series. If I remember how they have that staggered. I'm not certain about that, so don't quote me on that one. But what it means is, you have Draymond starting at center. Okay, that's bad for the other centers. You have Livingston out there alongside the other players for a period. You're going to have Iguodala out there doing a lot of backing up of Clay and Durant and even Steph to a certain extent, who can now come out, and you have Draymond, Iguodala, and Livingston there to handle the ball. But I'm really concerned with the centers now. We saw last game Draymond spend, I think, the most minutes at center he had spent this entire series at 9 and some change. Maybe that's 20 minutes tonight or something, and now we're in the weeds a little bit there. One of those guys could drop out of the rotation. Would not shock me whatsoever. And if this is the lineup they're going to play, if you make me stick with one at this point, previously it would have been very close for me between Bogut and Looney. Bogut had still gotten the start. Looney got more minutes last game. Bogut didn't look great. Looney looked very good. So that's interesting, kiddos. Concern for Harrell now also. No. Nope. I mean, if your theory is that he now deals with like a tougher defense and gets smarter, I don't think any of that is necessarily the case. The defensive assignments as they start this game are going to be a little bit interesting. Helps Gallinari a hair. I'll go over there. I presume they'll probably put Clay on SDA most of the game. They're going to run a lot, and there's always lots of switches, so it's not super concerning to talk about. I'm trying to think if there's any other edge to take away here. But, in a multi-game, it's a shame that this isn't a normal slate. It's a shame this isn't tomorrow. It's a shame this isn't a 2 or a 3 or a 4 game slate, because people would spend, the 3,500 or the 3,000 on Livingston, and I'd be like, okay, well, let's get the hell away from that. FanDuel, I'm not that excited, but as far as other minimum price plays, I don't want to speak out of school here, so I'm going to take a minute and look at other guys towards that floor on the one-day FanDuel slate at the bottom. I think it was basically him and McKinney anyway. Quinn Cook also has not played in a couple games. Yeah. I'd have had them both over Garrett Temple. And yeah, even Zubac was 6,500. So he is the best if you're playing a 6K. I'll put it this way. This is the best way. On FanDuel, it is not worth reorienting your lineup to get him in there at 6K because he's such a good play. Okay, so if you have a lineup you like and it doesn't have a 6K player, there's no reason to tear shit up to, oh god, I got to get Livingston into play. Lots of people are going to do that. That's probably a mistake on FanDuel. If you like your lineup, accepting any potential issues this now creates for Looney or Bogut, just stick with your lineup. No reason to fuck with it. On DK, he does make a very compelling play at $1,000, and it is worth tinkering and coming up with something in him. Not a requirement whatsoever. There is a very real chance he plays 17 minutes and scores 9 fantasy points and is 40% owned and just busts his chalk. So again, if you don't have him right now, don't, it is not a crisis of, it is not a out of nowhere, holy shit, Embiid is sitting, Bolden is starting and he's minimum price type situation. It's fine if you don't have any Sean Livingston, even on DraftKings. But he is a very strong play at their remarkably low floor of $1,000, which is why remarkably low floors are bad. You can argue where that point should be, but there's a reason having, guys who cost 13K and one guy who costs 1K, because when they randomly pick up a start and shit goes sideways, they become a little too good. So he is not a good play in a normal sense, but because of the various nuances of lineup structuring on DraftKings, that's pretty appealing. Make me follow up. Give me some more questions. Who the hell is Marcus Derrickson at 1,800? He's a guy who is not going to play on the Warriors under almost any circumstances. Iggy or Beverly already have other 3 Golden State Warriors. Beverly. Ownership. Ooh, they said the ownership is updated. Refreshing. I'm curious how it thinks with me. It has Sean Livingston at 20%. Again, I will take the over on that. A captaincy there is not insane. You need things to be very even-handed, but that's not impossible. You could get between 40 and 50 fantasy points out of Steph, Durant, Draymond, Lou, and Montrez. And you play those 5 guys and Captain Livingston, I'm guessing. I don't know. I won't take the time to build it right now with 2 minutes and change to go there. Clay, Beverly, Livingston, or Draymond, J. Mike, and Looney on FanDuel. It's FanDuel. I will take the latter one still. Any early takes on tomorrow's games? Not in the 90 seconds we have before lock. Yeah. So, okay, I'm going in the full scanning node. I will let you know if I get an update there. Yeah, it's unfortunate that, again, if they had that proper, if they had the correct format, the format they should have, 2 minutes to go, by the way, with this being a 2-day slate, it would be a great Sean Livingston fade, because there is a very real floor, and he would end up being significantly over-owned if you had to pay, X $1,000 for him. But $6,000 on FanDuel is fine. He's the best $6,000 play. It's not saying a lot. And $1,000 on DK is actively very good for $1,000. So that's a little bit disappointing. Don't go there on the FanDuel 2-day slate. There's no reason not to play whatever the fuck, Patty Mills. I have a feeling there are other bargain point guards for a little more money that are carrying a lot more upside, in my opinion, at low ownership. And I'm curious if I will have an entry into any of that, so that it would be possible to see how he did on the 2-game slate. Was a question that came in. Looney or JaMychal Green utility spot DK? JaMychal Green by a country mile. Someone says both. I strongly disagree with that. There is a real chance Kevon Looney plays 12 minutes in this game now. I'm fine playing Kevon Looney, but when you say both like that, you act like they're similar plays. I would have Kevon Looney right now projected for 17 minutes, and I'm not super confident in that. I have JaMychal Green projected for 34, so suggesting they're roughly equivalent plays to me is insanity, and I strongly disagree with that representation. You like Mills even though he's 4.7? Yes, I still think that's it's not a brilliant play, it's not a great play. It's better than even $3,500 Sean Livingston on that 2-day slate to me. Mills had been playing his 20 minutes a game, was playing some even inside Derek White in that last game. I want to say played 27 minutes or something due to the foul trouble. For me, I'm still I would still play much lower on Patty Mills at this point. It'll be interesting to see how many people try to cram him in that limited context. All right, we're there. We're locked apparently. Tings and tings and tings. Okay, let's see what we got. So, live contests. Again, 350K. Yeah, again, it's I like to think I know what I'm talking about, and that was good. I'm glad I had the time to really get into everything there. But these 1-game slates, I kind of don't like hosting shows because you represent having a certain degree of wow. Excuse me, I got to put a hat on so I can tip it to the algorithm. Largest tournament on DraftKings. I said I thought you'd get 30% Sean Livingston. The algorithm said 20%. 20.5. Tip of the cap, Eddie Lai, Emac, Josh Engelman, all the guys behind the scenes who worked that out. Nice shot. Extremely well done. I will take victory on another one, though. We will call it a draw. We had Durant at 69 and Steph at 77. I said I thought that was wrong. I thought that they would be significantly different. Steph Curry, 66. Kevin Durant, 81. Oh, shit. I got to see what percentage he was at the Captain. He did this yesterday, and I had the app, but I had to get a password for a live account. Because apparently on the phone and not on the desktop that I can find it, you can see what percentage someone is at captaincy. So I will download the overall ownerships on the PC while trying to see if... Okay, yes, I'm still logged in here. What do we have? Live... I haven't looked at this app in forever. I wonder how much they've made it better. Alright, 350K. Clicky. Click on the lineup, I'm guessing. Okay. Yeah, Steph, 66%, 22% captain. Durant, 81%, 27% captain. Yeah, which was why I was torn on the two of them. If I honestly thought Steph was going to have higher ownership, I'd have landed very highly on Durant. I did not for that reason. Clay, Lou Williams, 45% drafted, it's too low, and 7% captaincy. That feels pretty good. What's JaMychal Green's number? I'm going to get excited here. 25%. Which, again, by the way, tip of the cap algorithm, which had 28, I think. It's 25.62, so off by 2% again there. Again, anyone who knows me, I've been doing this for 5 years, and frequently get shit for not doing a good enough job shilling for the site, because It's not like it would ever be lying, but I like refuse to round edges, and I suppose I'm lazy to a certain extent. But I have worked for several sites that have had ownership projections, and they're so good. There are mistakes, of course. There are always mistakes with any calculation. It is one of the most complicated things to figure out. Figuring out a player projection, which is difficult to do with any degree of intrepidity and expertise, is easy compared to figuring out how owned Sean Livingston is going to be. It's like figuring out the player projection. I can do that in my head. Pretty close. And without looking at any projections or something, we can start in the morning. You can tell me who's starting for two teams, which teams are playing. And I feel like I can sit down with whoever you think has the best player projections in the world, Josh or Adam or whomever you think are the best, and I'll be within 10% off the top of my head or whatever they have. The ownership is so much more complicated. So much more complicated, because it's how much was this and what was written up here, and was it tweeted by this account or this account, and there's just so many factors. I'm talking apropos of nothing right now, but every time I look at stuff like this, I'm thoroughly impressed. But yeah, 25.6 to Michael Green. That's farcically low. I don't care if it works out or not. That's probably the best play on the slate. It is not impossible to get 34 minutes and 37 fantasy points, and whereas that doesn't sound like, ooh, he's pretty cheap. And it's a one-game goddamn slate. What are you looking for here? Alright, so your complete ownership. In theory, these numbers should add up to whatever, 500%, right? Am I getting that right? Anyway. Kevin Durant, 81. I think by extension I'd have less, but, 70, like, it's really tough to not build around the highest projected scorer. Number 2, 66, Steph. I like that. That's a third of players who don't have Steph Curry. If it's any of the last 3 games, that's going to work out fine for you. But again, he has gotten his shot. There is no, the defense is shutting him. Because there's no one there. The really interesting thing about the situation, or frustrating for me, as someone who tries to be predictive, is there's the people who are shutting down Kevin Durant and Steph Curry are mostly Steve Kerr and Kevin Durant and Steph Curry. The Clippers don't have shit to do with it. My daughter wants to say hi. Pat Beverly, 60%. That's probably more than I would have wanted. We had him projected for less than that. That is obviously a very, very healthy number. I like him a lot tonight, but the price is up, and there is obviously some chance he can fail. He is not Wilt Chamberlain when it comes to rebounding. 47% Gallinari, that's appropriate. 45% Lou Will, that's inappropriate. Not unlike myself. 44% Clay, about right. 43% Draymond, that's too low. Oh, okay, let's answer the phone. No problem. Hold on, let me turn on FaceTime, honey. Make sure. Yeah? Now, I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't say hi. Say hi to everyone, because I'm on air, which is why I didn't take your first call. So I got a couple thousand people.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. What can we do for you? The game's just started, so what's up?
I don't know if I want to ask now. But
Well, yeah, a lot of people are gonna hear. So if it's like girl stuff, don't do that. But what is it?
It's just, can I get a new game on Steam, like my very own?
You want to buy a new game on Steam? I'm so proud of you. You're my favorite daughter.
Thank you.
You want to say hi to everyone? Stick your face
You
over.
heard
Stick
that.
your face over the phone. Say hi.
Hi.
There we go.
I can't even see any of the comments.
No, and that's good. That's good.
Why?
Because the internet is a wild and lawless place in which we should not allow your untrammeled and innocent ears to pass. We'll be up later and talk about vocabulary. I'll tell you what those words mean. I'll be up to help you with your Steam game in a few minutes, honey.
Alright. Thank you, Dad.
You're welcome, love. Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. She's great. Diagnosed autistic. Nothing in the world will ever be greater than her continued improvement as a human being, the industry, and love her mother shows towards her. And it's a woeful fucking crime that you need to throw hundreds of $1,000s at the problem to fix it, and I can't imagine having a child trapped in their own head without the resources to do something about it. So, brilliant and at the same time sobering. So, that is it for today's show. Thankfully, she didn't decide to download a game on Steam until shortly after 10 p.m. Because, yeah. And in fairness to her, Rarely am I on the air at 10 something. So there we are, everyone. I hope everything works out for you. Let me see if there's a congratulations, you played yourself. I guess it's worth it looking at the ownership on the centers here. Kevon Looney, 30%. That is more than I would want with this news. I have real concern for the minutes. Tell me how you see him still getting 24 minutes. How does that work out? In a blowout, he's not out there. So he needs, in regular rotation, 24 minutes with Bogut hanging around. Could it happen? Sure, but you then need Bogut to play 8 minutes. It could happen. But it's going to require some weirdness. So Bogut, 14%. I'd have less. Looney, 30%. I'd have less. Probably like 15 and 5, respectively, to Looney and him. Yeah, other things. So there it is. Best of luck for you and your continued profitability. May your blessings be as bountiful as mine. And I'll see everyone again tomorrow.